Raju will share his thoughts.
A very good morning to all of you. On a dais, we have a speaker from the Chief President College, Desbandhu Mahavidyalaya, Sarvani Basu ma'am. Today we are going to organize a two-day lecture series on the partisan literature. Uh, one of the our speaker will join very shortly. In the absence of our TIC madam, just I will going to tell about I will going to introduce about the two days lecture series. Definitely, I would like to thank the Department of English for organizing such a different type of things. Definitely in our this university. Before this type of event is not happening in our university. So I would like to appreciate the Department of English and all the faculties member and all the students, those who are participating here. Uh, tomorrow speaker will join. Definitely Soumitra sir and one is Santanu Niyogi sir will join tomorrow. And in coming 2 days, we will learn a lot of things. We will able to feel the pain of partisans. Not only partisans, 1947 partisans, it will give a lot of pain when we memorize these things. And the people of this generation, the people of, like we can say that people like us, we are not able to recognize the things, we are not able to feel the pain, feel the sorrow. But if you ask your parents, our parents, they will say what is the what they feel that time. So in coming 2 days, we will able to learn, we will able to know about these things, and I think in coming 2 days, a lot of things by literature, we will learn a lot of things, and again, on the behalf of IQAC, on the behalf of college, I would like to welcome our madam today's speakers, Shravani Basu ma'am, and once again I also want to say thanks a lot for coming here for organizing this types of seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raju. Now it's our pleasure to felicitate Dr. Shravani Boshu with a small token of appreciation. And on behalf of this institution, Dr. Biru Raju will felicitate Professor Basu. On behalf of the Department of English, Dr. Roger Shengupta will felicitate IQAC Coordinator Dr. Biru Raju. Thank you, Dr. Shengupta. Now, Dr. Roger Shengupta, the senior faculty member of the Department of English, will introduce today's topic.
Good morning, everybody. Uh, I am very much delighted on behalf of the English department that renowned resource persons are coming from all over the district. And just a minute, Anirban Khan is calling. Just a minute. অনির্বাণ আমি স্টেজে আছি তুমি আসলে আমাকে বলতে পারো পৌঁছালে একটা পৌঁছো এক্স্যাক্টলি আমি স্টেজে আছি আমি লিখতে দিচ্ছি প্লিজ we are really very delighted to have with us a renowned resource person from Deshobandhu Mahavidyalaya, Chittaranjan, Dr. Shravani Boshu. And you are very much acquainted with Shravani because she has come in poetry session, not only this year but previous year she came also. And uh, yes, our departmental coordinator has entered. Thank you, Orbita. And we are very much elated that almost the entire department is present here. And I welcome on behalf of the college and on behalf of the department, Dr. Shravani Boshu. And I'm sure that she will illuminate us with her beautiful presentation, erudite presentation. And to introduce something about partition literature, I should say something about partition literature. Partition literature is also known as Holocaust or refugee literature, and it refers to literary works that explore the themes of, these themes are very important. The partition literature explores the themes of displacement, loss, trauma, and violence arising from the partition of India, which took place in 1947. It captures the human cost of this historical event, offering a personal side, the personal losses, okay, of history, and providing an alternative history of the partition. Actually, partition literature focuses on some themes. It focuses on human suffering. It focuses on communal riots and ethnic anxiety. It focuses on displacement and loss, trauma and trauma stories, and also it emphasizes on alternative histories, personal histories narrated by individual persons rather than depending on histories written by foreigners, particularly the Britishers. And it also focuses on many other traumas, mental pangs, mental agonies, sense of separation, sense of displacement, and sense of experiencing violence. Though we are not directly experienced about such type of traumas, separations, etc., but our previous generation has faced it very seriously and very pathetically. And so far as the famous writings and writers of partition literature is concerned, in your syllabus there are different texts which emphasize on partition, which emphasize on the violence, separation, okay, trauma of partition. And other than those texts which are included in your syllabus, there is Midnight's Children by Salman Rushdie, there is Train to Pakistan, it was there in your syllabus by Kaswan Singh, and Ice Candyman is very much significant. Okay, Soumitra Roy will speak on Ice Candyman. He is an expert in Ice Candyman because he has delivered his lecture in various colleges and universities on Ice Candyman. He will appear tomorrow. And there is Shadow Lines in your syllabus, okay, by Amitabh Ghosh. Shadow Lines is a kind of partition literature, though it is included in a different paper in your syllabus. And there is also a text called Ret Samadhi. Ret mane hoche sand, okay. So Ret Samadhi is written by, that means Tomb of Sand is written by Gitanjali Sri. Okay, and there are copious other examples of partition literature. And I hope on behalf of the English department that we will be illumined and enlightened about partition literature in the coming 2 days. Uh, that's all. I welcome once again Savoni, and I welcome you all. and I hope that it will be enlightened and illumined by the excellent presentation of these resource persons. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sengupta. Thank you, Dr. Biru Rajok. Now, we have our departmental coordinator with us, Professor Orpita Chakraborty. Without whose support this wouldn't have been possible. Now we are delighted to have Dr. Shravani Boshu with us, and it has become a very strong relationship with our department, as it seems. Dr. Boshu is now assistant professor in the Department of English in Deshbandhu Mahavidyalaya. She has also taught in several prestigious institutions. She has done her research in Indian and world literature from the prestigious FLU, Hyderabad, for the English and Foreign Language University, Hyderabad. Today, she'll be speaking on, she might say she'll be taking a class on For Your Lanes, My Country, a beautiful poem by Faiz Ahmed Faiz. So let's welcome Dr. Basu. We cannot wait.
Thanks a lot, Shujitada ma'am. It will take a few minutes. Sure.
এই লেকচার সিরিজগুলো আমাদের কলেজের ইউটিউব চ্যানেল আছে আসানসোল গার্লস কলেজ, সেখানে স্টুডেন্ট থাকবে, অনলাইন লাইভ ক্লাস করছি আমরা। আর যে স্টুডেন্টগুলো মিস করেছে আমি গ্রুপে শেয়ার করে দেবো লিঙ্ক, তোমরা কলেজের যে ইউটিউব চ্যানেল আছে সেখানে সাবস্ক্রাইব করে নেবে, তো কলেজের এইরকম যত ইভেন্টগুলো আছে তোমরা নোটিফিকেশন পাবে। আর টিচার স্টুডেন্ট আমি তোমাদেরকে বলছি যে মিস করেছে সে এখান থেকে দেখতে পাবে। ডেফিনেটলি আমরা দুদিনের মধ্যে অনেক জিনিস শিখবো আর খুব ভালো জিনিস শিখবো, এখানে আমরা ক্যাপচার করে রাখছি। থ্যাংক ইউ।
ঠিক আছে, সবাই বুঝতে পেরেছে এটা ইউটিউবে লাইভ টেলিকাস্ট হচ্ছে, ঠিক আছে?
কলেজে
Shall I?
Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning. I still have 5 minutes left to say good morning to you. It's a pleasure to be here amongst you. It has always been a pleasure to be amongst you. I'm a kind of regular visitor to your department, and I cannot be more thrilled to be here again. I mean, my regards to each and every one of you. Thank you for, asking me to be amongst you, and that means a lot. Now, I wouldn't waste much time because quite a few of you have to write an exam in a few weeks on partition literature, and as I understand, probably you don't feel grounded enough to do so. Quite a few of you probably do not have this text right now or do not have this paper right now, and you are just here to have a feel at this genre of this category of writing. Now, before I really leap into the text itself, let me have a few minutes trying to understand what partition literature is. Now, ladies, we know what partition is, that it's, whatever happened around 1947 when India and Pakistan were born out of a sudden political decision in the parts of the colonial government that divided the area, the region, the then existing region that we call India, under the communal lines. Now, when we talk about partition, when we talk about the demarcation, the sudden demarcation in the religious lines that You see, the Muslims will have these areas, the Hindu majorities will have that area, and all those things. We need to understand a few things. That the word partition has been used quite a few times in our history. One was the 1905 Bongo Bongo, the partition of Bengal. We are not talking about that now. One was the 1971 when East Pakistan and West Pakistan was demarcated and there was Bangladesh and Pakistan born out of them. We are not talking about that as well. Okay, we are not talking about the annexation of the princely states. We are not talking about the time when India kind of took Goa from the Portuguese. We are not talking about those things. We are talking about a particular political social event that happened around the 1947 when the colonial government empowered a barrister called Cyril Radcliffe. Okay, Cyril Radcliffe, you can Google it up later. Cyril Radcliffe, who did not have anything to do with India, who did not know anything of India or Pakistan or anything of South Asia, and who, quote unquote, did not know the east of Paris, he was empowered to draw up the map of India and Pakistan, demarcating which will be the lines around which the division will be made. So just understand one thing. If today we come in and say, hey, you guys, we need to demarcate Burnpur and Asansol, and if somebody, say from Hyderabad, comes in and does that, okay, will they do a good work? They know nothing about this area, okay, and that's exactly what happened. So, setting apart the extreme ethical question around partition, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, of course, not a good thing, but whatever it was, these issues also came into being when we talk about partition. Now, if you look at the history of partition, which I would ask you to do so if you can do a very quick study of it, you will see that the two states which faced partition or which faced partition very physically, because there were demarcating lines which passed through that, mostly were Bengal and Punjab. Okay, but partition, we understand the effect of partition in such a way that we kind of feel the effect of it, because even today we are living a legacy of it. The distrust, the communal loss of faith, the trauma that has percolated through generations, and it is still living amongst us. So, coming back to it, some 12 to 20 million people were displaced during partition. Now, understand this thing, 12 million and 20 million. There is a huge gap. আমি যদি বলি 5 জন আর 15 জন, that is a gap. But just imagine 12 million and 20 million. So there is the if of 8 millions. People are not sure, because this degree of violence, this degree of migration, this degree of displacement has never happened to us before or since. What else came with partition? Unspeakable violence, loss of property, that is probably the least, loss of identity, loss of livelihood, extreme violence against women everywhere in the name of retribution. Okay, you have done something bad to me, so I will violate women from your end. You have done something bad to somebody from my family, I will do violence to yours. So this almost, contest of violence and counter violence that happened around partition, and even after that. Now, you probably, if you remember your syllabus, At the bottom of it, there is a list of recommended readings, and there is Urvashi Budalia's writing in it. I suggest that you also take a quick look at what Urvashi Butalia has to say about, these things that we are talking about. The next thing that we are talking about is the kind of trauma that is associated with the word partition. I did not live during the partition. Of course not. My father? No. My grandparents? Yes. But even now, my grandfather is no more, and even now, when I ask my grandmother that what do you remember of partition, she says, I don't want to talk about it. Okay? If you have your great grandparents around and if you ask them that what do you remember of partition, they would say, we don't want to talk about it. Because trauma, that scar, that memory of violence is so deep that it takes years and years for people to even come close to talk about it. And that is what happened during partition. A similar incident had happened, or a similar kind of feeling and emotional experience had happened during the Nazi Holocaust in Germany during the Second World Wars. Now, probably because of this trauma, the literature that comes out as a narrative of partition is almost always graphic. Most of the time, especially when you read Manto, especially when you read Bapsi Sidhwa, you will read, discuss Ice Candy Man with Professor Shomitra Roy tomorrow. You will see that the descriptions are extremely pointed, extremely graphic. It's almost as if you can imagine seeing it. দেখে মনে হচ্ছে যেন তুমি চোখ বন্ধ করলে you can imagine what had happened. The second thing about partition literature, probably as in most trauma literature, is that it is mostly always recorded in retrospection. The same reason we don't want to talk about it while it has happened to us. So number one, extreme graphic literature. Two, it is mostly always recorded in retrospection, after, later. We will come to discuss why this is so. Okay. Thirdly, till very recently, have you noticed that we do not have any museum which is kind of dedicated to partition? Till very recently. A few years ago in Jallianwala Bagh, that place near the Golden Temple of Amritsar, a partition museum was created and constructed to commemorate whatever had happened that day. And, before that and since. But other than that, a lot of people have talked about how Holocaust museums are there in Europe, but we do not have a partition museum in India. Now, quite a lot of people therefore have said that though there is no partition museum to store our memories, literature has acted as a repository of those memories. So, partition literature, to a certain extent, is also a literature of memories. Okay, a literature of memories, because instead of having museums, places where you can store these things, you have remembered them and later you have recorded them. Now, what sort of literature, therefore, it is? All right. What happens to memories? Okay, if I ask any of you to suddenly close your eyes and say that which is your earliest memory, ekdom সবচেয়ে পুরনো memory কি, it will be difficult for any of us to remember that. And even if we remember what is our earliest memory, অর্ধেক কথা তো ভুলেই গেছি, কিন্তু suppose when we were 4, 5, We remember snippets. We don't remember them linearly. Age ki hochilo, pore ki hochilo. We don't remember those things. We remember them by snippets. We remember certain flashes of images, smell, touch, taste, sounds. Memories are always recorded through senses. Now, if a memory is traumatic and we have trouble to talk about it, there is one thing that human mind does. We wait for a time, and after some time, when we feel that we have adequately guarded our hearts, guarded our minds from that trauma, then we try to narrate it. So let's understand this construction of uh, partition literature as an effective information. I want you guys to write down this phrase, affective information. Not effective, affective. AFFECtive, affective information. Because scholars of partition literature, they have traced the trauma induced by partition to partition literature through a specific, you can say, flow chart. They say that a memory after a while, a traumatic memory after a while, after a suitable period of time, becomes a narrative memory. Mane, a memory that we can narrate, that can be a part of a narration. Then that can be included in whichever form. It can be oral literature, it can be uh, different oral forms, it can be literature, it can be painting, it can be anything. And that, after a while, therefore becomes affective information. Now, what is this affective information? It is a combination of, say, facts, things that actually had happened, with things that could not happen, plus things that probably should have happened, plus things that did not happen. Please understand this. Affective information is a combination of things that did happen, things that could have happened, things that should have happened, and things that did not happen. The difference between history and affective information is therefore that we cannot test the 100% authenticity or veracity of it, because there is so much subjectivity invested in it. We do not know কতটা সত্যি হয়েছিল, কতটা হওয়া উচিত ছিল, কতটা হতে পারত, আর কতটা হয়নি। Am I making sense here, guys? Okay. Now, you guys probably have read Ghosts of Mrs. Gandhi. You remember it? Amitav Ghosh, Ghosts of Mrs. Gandhi. And you remember, there is in some place, Amitav Ghosh says that, that happened in the late 80s. I'm writing about it in the late 90s. Why this decade-long gap? Because I was not ready to talk about it. Okay? And this first-person narration, which almost constitutes like, a memory telling, this was categorized in New York, the New Yorker, that magazine, the New Yorker, that's where it was published, under the category of personal history. This is the history that perhaps is not recorded, but this is personal. It probably happened to me. It probably happened to a lot of people. And here we come into another related concern. Okay? And that is, you know, what happens to communal memory? Okay, whose memory are we talking about? Mine? Is it just mine? Or is it a memory of a lot of people who had similar experiences, you know, to me? Experiences which are similar to me. Okay? একটা কিছু হয়েছিল उसमें मैं भी थी उसमें तुम भी थे. Now not necessarily my experience and your experience was the same, but still these constitute a collective memory. But there is another issue regarding collective memory, because collective memory, it also has some politics in it. Now politics মানে একবারে party politics না কিন্তু, ঠিক আছে? Politics এখানে হলো, this is the way that whatever is around you wants you to act towards this memory. The thing is, nobody wants you to remember things objectively. सच में क्या हुआ था वो बताओ, কেউ জিজ্ঞাসা করে না বাবা। জিজ্ঞাসা করে আপনার কেমন লাগছে বলুন, আপনার কেমন লাগছে, ঠিক আছে? So everybody is interested in how you feel as a reaction to it. And if you follow the media, most of the media around our time, it says, it kind of leads you to say what you are feeling. Okay, the questions are leading, they want you to remember things in a particular way. So this is something that quite a few partition scholars call a project of remembrance versus communal memory. Okay, and there a lot of people have said that this is the irony of the communal memory. We sometimes forget things because that is the only way to save myself. If something very bad has happened to me, I try to forget it so that I live. It is not easy to remember it every day, every minute. Okay, you try to push it away, you try to suppress it, and if you forget it, sometimes you do it again. This is the irony of a memory or something that has happened to a lot of people. We know what happens to communal violence. We know what happens when there is a riot. We know what happens when we give in to violence irrationally. I don't think there is any rational way of violence, but anyway, if we give in to our instincts irrationally, but still we do it because we choose to forget. ঠিক আছে, ভুলে গেছি আবার হয়েছে, আবার ভুলে যাব আবার হবে। Now therefore people say that this collective memory that constitutes things like trauma literature, partition literature, Holocaust literature, a lot of literature which are memories or which are records of bad things happening, these collective memories are not a testament of the past. Okay, but how could you write it down best? Could you write it down? Okay, the project of remembrance implies that collective memory is not about the past, comma, but how past is reconstructed, in common psyche, comma, which in turn supposedly designs the future. Designs the future. Okay? Done? Alright. Let's talk about fairs now. Okay? I want you guys to keep this. I keep on saying guys, but it's okay. I want you ladies to keep these few things, these penny worth few things in mind while we get into the text now. Okay? Could I have the PPT? And will it be possible if I walk amongst you? মানে আমার একটা অমায়িক বলা শোনা যাচ্ছে তো you can hear me right yeah this is Fez Ahmed Fez. Now if you guys are wondering what that CH in the beginning stands for, it's Chaudhry Fez Ahmed Fez. That's what his salutation and his honorific and his name is. And the name of the text is for your lanes, my country, not for your last country. Okay, that is a mystery. For your lanes, my country. Now this image that you see of Fez, I liked it and I chose it because of the quotation that is imprinted with it. Okay. My Urdu is non-existent. Let me read it out. और भी दुख है ज़माने में मोहब्बत के सिवा राहतें और भी है मसले की राहत के सिवा. Okay. Those of you who understand the language better than me probably get the gist of what it says. It's a quotation not from this particular text that we are reading about, but a text which is rather a poem which is rather famous of Fez, and that is मुझसे मेरी पहली सी मोहब्बत मेरे महबूब ना मां. I think you guys have wonderful Hindi and you can understand what's the meaning of it. मुझसे मेरी पहली सी मोहब्बत मेरे महबूब ना मां. We will go back to it later. Born in 1911, died in 1984. Ironically, he died just after he was nominated for the Nobel Prize. Now, probably you can use the quotation. It's a quotation by Gerald James Larson in his book India's Agony Over Religion, published in 1997, which says, partition is at the heart, is not only one of the great regional conflicts, but it is also an important component or factor in a whole series of religious come political conflicts reaching down to the present time. Please keep this in mind. Partition khatam nahi hua, we are still living it. We are still living it. Something happened last night, some stuff happened a couple of weeks ago. We are still living it every day. Now, as we have already discussed, that when we talk about partition narrative, these are some of the things that we expect in a partition narrative, in any text that talks about partition. Number one, the flood of communal violence which splintered the national cause that motivated the freedom struggle as well as any pretense of secular nationalism. When this freedom struggle was on, there were certain ethics or ethical principles that were associated with it. Okay? One was that there is a one nation. Now, it is not that अचानक 1947 में आके लोगों को लगा कि freedom struggle. Secondly, the partition narratives also talk about religious intolerance and bigotry increasingly as it became apparent in common social experience. Religious intolerance, a very, very now thing for us. Bigotry, religion-based violence, you did this, me versus you, this kind of rhetoric, these have become something that we probably inherited from that time. Thirdly, as the partition or whatever violence was around the partition, as it escalated, efforts of socialism and the Gandhian principles of non-violence started losing place. Right? People are killing each other, people are raping each other. What Gandhian non-violence had? Okay, that went out of the window. Okay, very, very unfortunately went out of the window because nobody was really, or most people were not ready to follow or to even give any honor to that. And then what happened? The trauma of partition, as we already have discussed, made related literary narratives extremely graphic and often judgmental. It is very difficult to find partition narratives which do not pose the world as a binary. Very, very rare. Even Marxism has not been able to put an impartial take on partition. Though grudging rationality returned with time, sectarian violence and loss of trust became bywords of the emerging nations. Yes, with time, slowly people tried to become rational, but again, loss of trust, violence, as we were talking about, these became more common, especially when we are dealing with Pakistan, as when Pakistan is dealing with us. Okay. You have the poem with you, right? The handout that you have on your left is the original version of it. Of course, it's not written in Urdu because very few of you will be able to read it. I, for one, will not be able to read it. But on the other side, on the right hand side, is a very rough translation of it and not a very good quality translation. This translation at least did not make me happy. But anyway, this will give you an idea of what more or less this particular text talks about. Now, this particular text is believed to be written sometime around 1951 to 52, and this was the time when Faiz was imprisoned in Pakistan and was later exiled. Now, if you read this particular poem, you will see that this poem does not fall under the conventional rhetoric of partition. एक तो 4-5 साल बाद में लिखा हुआ है, 4-5 बছর হয়ে গেছে, এবং দ্বিতীয়ত it does not talk about the conventional rhetoric, the conventional language of partition narratives. ঠিক আছে, সেই ট্রমাটা এখানে কিন্তু নেই, এখানে ট্রমা is a little different কিরকম ভাবে we will see. But what is there? There is a commentary on the condition of the society immediately after 1947. All the dreams that independence brought us, that there will be a Sunehri Subah and there will be well, a good time, okay, which will be good for people who have been under the colonial control, those incidents, okay, and the gradual decline of the nation, which absolutely shattered all those dreams of all those euphoria of partition, that kind of came in. Okay, what happened? What happened to those dreams? What happened to those principles? You know, we thought that once we are independent, we will have a good life, which is in control of us. We can decide what is good for us. We can decide what is good for our country. But still, that disappeared. So that euphoria left us. Now, this particular poem, therefore, it denotes the declining national morale and the political instability with fluctuations between theocratic governance, military regimes, and liberal democratization. Now, if you kind of follow the political condition of Pakistan, it fluctuates between theocracy, theocratic governance, military regimes, and liberal democratization. Things have not been very stable in Pakistan for the last several decades. Now, what prompted this particular text? What prompted this particular, what prompted Fairs to write this particular text? Now, from 1952 to 1961, Faiz Ahmed Faiz, along with Sajjad Zahir and Akbar Khan, they introduced a tradition of prison poetry which languishing for freedom and in line with Faiz's Marxist philosophy. Now, before we understand any poetry of Faiz and Faiz, it is crucial that we understand that Faiz was a confirmed, a very staunch uh, socialist, and he was he was one of the founding members of the Communist Party of Pakistan, and he was also a member of the Progressive Writers Association of the Undivided India, which was headed by Munshi Premchand and which was very much blessed by Rumi. Okay? So, coming from this particular literary and political lineage, Faiz Ahmed Faiz, around 1951, was imprisoned because he was accused that he had he had um, he had conspired against the then Prime Minister of Pakistan, Liaquat Ali Khan, okay, to, well, to form a coup d'etat, to remove him from his position and to establish a Marxist, a socialist, a communist government. Okay? And in March 9th, 1951, Liaquat Ali Khan ordered the imprisonment of Major General Akbar Khan. Sajjad Zahir was the founder of Pakistan Communist Party, and Faiz Ahmed Faiz was the editor of Pakistan Times, which was an English daily newspaper, and Imrod, and Urdu newspaper, which were both extremely socialist in nature. Okay? Among others. But other people as well. And this entire thing was called the Rawalpindi Conspiracy. That's it. Now, why did Liaquat Ali Khan think that Faiz Ahmed Faiz is trying to remove him? Because Liaquat Ali Khan felt that Faiz, which was not exactly very wrong, so far there has never been any proof of the Rawalpindi conspiracy. Liaquat Ali Khan felt that Faiz Ahmed Faiz anti-Russia Cold War policies. Okay, that is time of the Cold War, and he did not want the anti-Russia policy, and therefore he wanted to establish a communist government which supported Russia. Now, further, you know, further accusations surfaced, and by and by, he was sentenced to 4 years of imprisonment in 1954, but he was finally released along with the others because no solid evidence could be produced by him at that time. Okay, so he was imprisoned, but he then was released. This is something that Fair said about imprisonment, and that is very important for listeners to know. If you feel like it, take a photograph of it, because probably you can use this occasion while you are writing the answer on this particular form. Done? Done? I will just read a few lines of it. Thus, prison is first like another adolescence when all sensations again become sharp and one experiences once again the same original astonishment at feeling the dawn breeze, at seeing the shadow of evening, the blue of the sky, and the feeling the passing breeze. It happens that the time and the distance of the external world are both cancelled. I skip a few lines. Sometimes a moment seems an immeasurable span of time, and sometimes a century appears to be a thing which happened just yesterday. Third, in the tranquility of separation, one finds greater leisure to attend to the outer adornment of the bride of poetry in addition to meditation and study. So he compared his imprisonment with adolescence. It's coming of age, because when you are coming of age, when you are an adolescent, suddenly all the senses feel সব কিছু একটু অন্যরকম, সব কিছু একটু আলাদা, you feel things differently. And he said, it, we don't know the span of time, মানে রাত দিন তো ঘুরিয়ে গেছে জেলের মধ্যে। We don't understand when is morning, when is night. We don't understand what is happening outside and what is happening inside. And probably this is the time when we can meditate and look at the writer of poetry and নতুন করে চেনা। For Fez and the Fez, imprisonment was a difficult thing, but it was also an opportunity to re-see, to re-visualize poetry. Now, what Fez and the Fez does when he is writing his poetry is what is normally Fez's poems are like. Fez uses more or less the conventional rhetoric or the conventional style of Urdu poetry, which is mostly romantic. But Fez and other writers of the time, Fez, Kafiasi, Ramkhali Sindinkar, Amrita Pritam, and all these people, they created something which we can call romantic revolution. So on one hand, they used the traditional, okay, ashik, that is the lover, mashuka, that is the beloved, the needy love, ishq, okay, fana, and all these words which are associated with almost a pure, a very pure, a very religious form of love. But instead of using a human beloved or human mashika, he and the other people of his time used the idea of watan. What is watan? Motherland. country, nation. Okay? So, if suppose you are the Ashik and this is the Mashuka, then you are actually the patriot, the Mashuka is the country, and this Ish is patriotism. Okay? Okay? Okay. So, what are the central themes of this particular text? One is history and time as the chief interlocutor of social condition. So, though he is using the language of love poetry, romantic poetry, what he talks about are domination, particularism, and zealotry. Okay? So all the evils of social condition that has come to, that has come out after independence, crumbling down all our hopes that we have. Okay? If you look at, I don't know if you guys are interested in old Hindi songs, पूरा black and white के ज़माने का साहिल लुधियानवी and stuff and all. And if you remember the talk that Professor Sumitra Roy gave the other day when we were talking about reading poetry at difficult times. And he quoted that particular poem called जिनके नाज है जिन पे वो कहाँ है. ठीक है? So poems like those, which were mostly rooted in Hindi, Urdu songs, filmy songs of that time. Remember, Sadat Hussain Manzur, Sahil Ludhianvi, Amrita Preetham, Faiz Ahmed Faiz, all the Kathy Azmi, all these people were also associated with the film line because they were lyricists for film songs. Okay, a lot of them were also script writers. Now, then they were talking about, he's talking about liberation. Now for him, liberation is not just the liberation of somebody from something, but it's a universal sense of freedom that I am free. Bol hila bazaar hai teri. That is not phrases, but any bol hila bazaar hai teri, bol ke jaan ab tak teri hai. ठीक है, हम इसको तेरा सुखा है तेरा बोल जान I'm misquoting, I'm sure. But anyway, so here the liberation is not just the political or the physical liberation, but also the liberation of your personality, of your inner self, okay, from these social injunctions or these social evils. Right? Well, I'm trying to make it simple. Again, he is writing against aggressive nationalism and religious bigotry. Very interesting to note. The moment you say nationalism is equal to religious identity, very bad news. We know what happens when it's happening to us right now. Patriotism is not equal to religious identity. It has never been so, and that's exactly what Faiz and people of this time were talking about. Common themes in post-independence Indian and Pakistani poetry, they all talked about how religious bigotry is not nationalism. This aggressive form of nationalism, that is not the kind of thing that Faiz or even the other like Ramhani Sindhilkar, Ranjai Bachchan, Amrita Preeta, all these people. Then something that we are talking about, one Faiz's influence. Faiz is very deeply influenced by Allama Iqbal. So with Iqbal, he came up with this idea of romantic nationalism, which, as we just talked about, that the Mashuka, the beloved, is the land. Ye watan. Then, a new revolutionary ideal. So the conventional Urdu poetry, the rhetoric, the style, the motifs of Urdu poetry was preserved. Only the metaphors around it changed. The subjects changed. Revolution. That came up. And therefore, if we read on, you know, these poetry, we have a kind of a very mixed feeling. Simultaneously, we feel that ये सब कुछ गलत होगा, सब कुछ खराब होगा, सब amazes and immortal. কিন্তু there is a simultaneous feeling of hope. If you read this particular line of your text here, একটু নিচের দিকে মাঝামাঝি, একটু মাঝামাঝি নিচের দিকে. My heart sees stars sprinkled in your hair. My heart sees stars sprinkled in your hair. When I see light through these gratings, I know your face would be bathed in dawn. তবুও আমার মনে হয় তোমার মাথার মধ্যে তারার আলো। এই যে জেলখানার বরাদের মধ্যে থেকে আলো ফুটে আসছে, এই আলোটা তোমার মুখটাও ফুটিয়ে দিচ্ছে। So this hope, this finalization of beauty, this resilience of truth and beauty, যে সব ধ্বংস হয়ে গেলেও there will be truth and there will be beauty. This commitment, this বিশ্বাস always stays with you. বোঝা গেল? বোঝা গেছে? না কিছু আছে? All right. The poem. Let's read it. Okay, why don't you hear it? Let's hear this poem. We have a little time.
निसार मैं तेरी गलियों पे है वतन,
जी जी
निसार मैं तेरी गलियों पे है वतन के जहाँ चली है रस्म के कोई न सर उठा के चले।
वाह वाह वाह
चली है रस्म कि कोई न सर उठा के चले, जो कोई चाहने वाला तवाफ को निकले,
जी
नजर चुरा के चले, जिसमें जान बचा के चले।
वाह वाह वाह
जो कोई चाहने वाला
जी जी
तवाफ को निकले,
तवाफ को निकले,
नजर चुरा के चले, जिसमें जान बचा के चले।
वाह वाह वाह
और बहुत है जुल्म के दस्ते बहाना जू के लिए, जो चंद अहले जुनू तेरे नाम लेवा हैं।
जी जी
जो चंद अहले जुनू तेरे नाम लेवा हैं, बने हैं अहले हवस मुद्दई भी मुनसिफ भी।
जी जी जी
बने हैं अहले हवस मुद्दई भी मुनसिफ भी, किसे वकील करें किससे मुनसिफी चाहें। बने हैं अहले हवस मुद्दई भी मुनसिफ भी, किसे वकील करें किनसे मुनसिफी चाहें। मगर गुजारने वालों के दिन गुजरते हैं,
जी जी
मगर गुजारने वालों के दिन गुजरते हैं, तेरे फिराक में यूं सुबह शाम करते हैं।
वाह
तेरे फिराक में यूं सुबह शाम करते हैं, बुझा जो रोज़ने जिंदा
जी
तो दिल ये समझा है कि तेरी मांग सितारों से भर गई होगी।
वाह वाह
बुझा जो रोज़ने जिंदा
जी वाह वाह
तो दिल ये समझा है कि तेरी मांग सितारों से भर गई होगी। और चमक उठे हैं सलासल
जी
तो हमने जाना है
जी
कि अब सहर तेरे रुख पर बिखर गई होगी। हमने जाना है कि अब सहर तेरे रुख पर बिखर गई होगी।
वाह वाह
यूं ही तसव्वुर शामो सहर में जीते हैं,
जी जी
तसव्वुर शामो सहर में जीते हैं, गिरफ्ते साया दीवारों दर में जीते हैं।
वाह
understand? Do you like the sound of it? At least. So what he's trying to say is that for your links by country, I can sacrifice all I have. Okay, very different translation, so not difficult to understand at all. But the custom these days is no one walks with head held high. Okay? Now he uses the word for people who have heart. Now, people who have heart is not always lovers. People who have heart can be anybody who have sensitivity. Okay? It can be people who have sensitivity. So they cannot walk with their head held high. They will have to keep their heads crouching down. Taki, they can save themselves. They can survive this difficulty. For them, a new order of the day now, the bricks and the stones are imprisoned and the stray dogs free to roam for the many apologists of tyranny. This is the age of tyranny, where people will have to be very careful. You cannot say the truth and survive. You cannot be truthful and survive. Who can imagine? In a greedy world where the greedy people who have become both the judge and the jury, who will become your vakil, who will become your advocate, who will fight for you. But people do survive. People do survive away from you, worry about you day and night, but manage somehow when the prison ratings darken, and then he says, my heart these stars sprinkled in air. So even then, when things are bad, so bad that it is the tyrannical government that is all around you, when there are people who are walking almost crouching down because they are afraid to stand with their head held high, even then, we can have life through poetry, through beauty, through hope. And then he says, this is how we always view flowers in fire. Their defeat is a new, our victory is a new. Exactly what happened. Okay, this is nothing new. There is no reason to be extra sorry about this. Because this is a cycle of life. Where our victory isn't new, their defeat is also not new. We will live, we will be victorious, but that's natural because as I knew that. This is how the cycle of life runs. That's why I don't complain to the heaven or make myself sad thinking about you. Okay? Because I'm certain there will be hope, there will be victory in future. Because this is what the cycle of life is. आज नहीं पर कल joy निश्चय आएगी. And never I will complain to heaven or be sorry for you. Because you will be alright and I will be alright. Then we are apart today, but tomorrow we'll be together. Separation for one night isn't much. What if my rivals are riding high today? Their reign of a few days isn't much. Those who remain true to you understand what the daily turmoil really means. So, till then, it is only the daily turmoil, but also the attachment, my faithfulness towards you. Now, who is this you? Who's this you? Kafi bolche? You? Mother. আর মনে রেখো প্রেমের কবিতাতে যেমন তোমাকে দেখতে এত সুন্দর ইত্যাদি ইত্যাদি বলেছে যে তোমাকে is always the country, the motherland, the motherland. Okay? Very quickly. So, deterioration from the high ideal of a progressive secular nation, then considered dangerous and people of heart are crouching to survive. The little lovers here are actually the literal translation of this word. I asked a friend who understands Urdu, and that is people of heart. Anybody can be a people of heart. Anybody who is sensitive. Instead of love, beauty, and truth, the three common motives of Urdu poetry. What is the motive here? Claustrophobia and oppression. Okay? Justice is now a commodity for the psychopaths and the rich. The greedy have become both the judge and the jury. Kaun banega vakil? Survival is thus a compulsion and not a pleasure anymore. But still, prison, tyranny, these are all rivals. My rival is high today. The last few lines. My rival is high today. I am in a prison. Tyranny is very strong. But my mashuka, that is my beloved, that is the nation, my ishq, my wafa, my attachment, faithfulness towards you, that is patriotism, is still there. So we do not have anything to fear. Okay. Anything, guys? I have some notes prepared. I will make them available to your teachers. If you wish to, probably you can use those later.
You can ask a question. You can ask questions. Any observations? Come on. কারণ কিছু বলার নেই? As you have mentioned that difference of history and effective information is that we cannot taste the sense of authenticity. So, ma'am, could you please repeat that? What will be the sense of authenticity?
Suppose if I say 3 days ago something very bad happened to me. But the thing is, history is extremely verifiable. ये हुआ था, कैसे हुआ था, कब हुआ था, कैसे कौन-कौन थे इसमें, so they can make a documentary evidence to support that. But when it is a personal experience and when I'm telling about it after a few days or a few months or a few decades, how much of it had happened and how much of my emotions are invested in it, how much of अगर ये नहीं होता तो कैसा होता, अगर ये ऐसा होता तो कैसा होता, and all these things are also invested in my narration of it. ठीक है? So how will you know actually how much had happened? Or even if a lot more had happened, I probably don't know of it. Am I making sense?
Yes, ma'am. That you have already mentioned that combination of things that really happened, could have happened, didn't have happened.
Could have happened or did not happen.
Thank
Yeah.
you, ma'am.
So how do you know how much of it had really happened?
Are you asking me?
No. That is what a rhetorical question is. That ধরো আমি বললাম যে এই আমার সাথে হয়েছিল, তার মধ্যে কিন্তু আমার নিজের এক্সপেরিয়েন্সও অনেকটা আছে, আমার নিজের সাবজেক্টিভ ইমোশনস এর মধ্যে অনেকটা জড়িত আছে। এর মধ্যে কতটুকু হয়েছিল, এর থেকে বেশি হয়েছিল না ঠিক কি হয়েছিল, এতদিন পরে আমারও বলার ক্ষমতা থাকবে না, জানার জানারও ক্ষমতা থাকবে না। Let me give you a small story which I heard, an anecdote which I heard from, my old professor, Professor Alok Bhalla from FU. Alok Bhalla, those of you who have probably read some of the texts in your partition literature, especially of Manto, probably you have read his translation of it. Alok Bhalla was a big name, those days in partition literature. So Alok Bhalla spoke of, Alok Bhalla had invited Gyan Pandey, an eminent historian who was also working on partition literature and the untold stories of it. কতটা যেগুলো বলাই হয়নি বা এত ছোট ছোট অনেক ঘটনা যেগুলো সবার কাছে গিয়ে পৌঁছয়। And there he said that they had went for a field visit and they spoke to a man called Babu, okay, who had experienced the violence after partition. So the first question what he asks is, okay, क्या नाम है आपका? साहब बाबू. तो बाबू क्या? पता नहीं. क्यों? And then after hours of talking, they found out that this guy was converted so many times from one religion to another religion to another religion to another, that he no longer remembers whether he is Babu Singh or Babu Khan. And that is what is his reality. He does not remember what he started with. And then Gyan Pandey said that he had asked him, "Kaisa laga tha?" That kind of that reporter wala question. "Apnar kemon mone hocche? Kaisa laga tha?" And Gyan Pandey then said, "I shouldn't have asked that question." And he actually stood up. He was quite elderly then. He stood up and he said, "This is what Babu did. Sir, yaad nahi hai." This pains. This was difficult, but he does not remember. What had actually happened that day? How will you know? That's not a part of any history. We know what happened in partition. We know what happened during that time, but a lot of it also is not said, not recorded in any history book. Only people remember it. How much of it is actual and how much of it is so deep inside my mind that even I don't know. Kya hua? Pata nahi. Making sense? I don't know. Is it? Okay. Is it? Did it make sense? I'm not really sure. Because I was doing my MA in those days, and most of the time we were sitting like this because things were a lot more violently described than today. Anybody? Anything? Anybody? Anything? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow. Dr. Basu's rendition of Faiza's poetry took me back to my student life. My classroom memories just came alive. I'm sure you all listened very intently. I saw you writing, taking down notes, and that was the very purpose of arranging this lecture series. Ma'am's detailed discussion on the history of partition, politics of partition, theorizing partition literature, and a deeper insight on Urdu poetry in general have enriched you all for sure. So, as a token of appreciation and gratitude, would like to hand over a little memento to her And I'd like to call upon stage our departmental coordinator, Professor Odita Chakraborty, and Shravani. Girls, help ma'am. And please a big round of applause for Shravani. এরকম লেকচার আরো শুনবো তো আমরা? হ্যাঁ, একটু জোরে বলতে হবে। তাহলে শ্রাবণীদিকে বারবার আবার আসতে হবে, বারবার আসতে হবে, আসতেই হবে। Thank you so much. And we already have our next speaker, Professor Anirban Kahali. Professor Kahali is a professor of Department of English, Kochi College. His area of specialization is American literature, Indian English literature, partition and trauma literature. On behalf of Department of English, I'd like to call Professor Kahali on stage. And to felicitate Professor Kahali, I'd like to call Dr. Ajoy Sengupta on stage. Girls, let's welcome Professor Kahali, our next speaker, our next distinguished guest. And thank you so much, Professor Kahali, for being here. So, Professor Kahali will shortly begin his lecture on Sadat Hasan Manto's Toba Teksen.
Before we begin with our lecture, I hope you people have already read a few of the texts, including Train to Pakistan, right? How many of you have not read?
Yes, should I just I mean, you will be the white notes are এটা ওখানে তুলতে হবে করে উঠতে হবে যদি ঠিক আছে যাও ও থ্যাংক
Okay, so haven't got my answer. Everyone has read Train to Pakistan, right? Very good. Very good. Now, why such a question when we are here to discuss overtaxing?
Why girls?
Last page, last. Thank you. Just one. Very quickly. See here.
By the time you settle down, I would like to ask for some forgiveness because all those who are sitting over here are basically those who have taught me when I was young. I was doing my graduation and masters, especially Ojoy sir and Bhotida ma'am. So, yeah, of course, speaking in front of them is quite a nerve-breaking thing to me, and the way ma'am just said about Faiz Ahmed Faiz. It was really insightful. I couldn't attend the entire lecture because there was a huge traffic while I was coming back from pool. And we cannot control it. That's a part of our development. Yeah, we had immense traffic over there, which took me some time. But let's begin, right? What is the first thing that comes to your mind when we talk about partition? What's the first thing that you said? Trauma. I have a terrible handwriting, I know that. No, my memory is okay, trauma, displacement, memory, and what? Separation. Okay. Not loss of identity, loss of identity. Is it? Like, that's it? Or is there something else? Achha, aren't we missing one particular word? Can you divide two countries without this particular thing? But what is a border? What is a border? Is it always physical? Isn't it psychological as well? Don't you think when you talk about Pakistan, don't you think that they are somewhat other from us? Look at all those narratives that we find today, either on news or on any other place. The narratives that we find talks about Pakistan as if it is completely a country which we do not know about. The people of that place is something we are not even familiar about. So border does not always mean a geographical line. You cannot always draw a border. It is very much a shadowy line. It is very much a shadow. It is very much there inside you. And that border, which is there inside you, has been planted so deeply that no matter what, you cannot erase it. No matter what, you cannot rise above that border. So when we talk about partition, we talk about a lot of different things. Just when I asked about partition, you said so many different attributes of partition. But this is what partition has caused to us. But about border, you didn't even bother about talking the loss of trust. Do we really trust our neighbors? না, মোর বাড়ির পাশে নেবারের কথা বলছি। এখনই বলবে না বাড়ির পাশে কাকিমা খুব ভালো, আমাকে মাংস খাওয়া। না, প্লিজ। আমি ওই দুটো দেশের কথা বলছি। Do we trust them? But why don't we trust them? Because somewhere or the other, they have been othered, separated from us. Right? Now, if you look at what we call about partition, and when I said that we are talking about this loss of trust, see, all this, whatever we are talking about, we will shortly begin with the text as well. But all this is somewhat there in the text. Let me just open it because I'm feeling a bit not something that I generally use. Thank you for this one, but I have to open it because I feel a bit. No, normally classes they use pura saga na. Okay. Now, when we talk about partition, it is an amalgamation of several things. As ma'am said, there is a history behind it. At the same time, partition is also a part of conflict studies, border studies, and geopolitics. Perhaps we have never seen such great exodus ever before. And as I said just a while back, the loss of trust, when there will be an exodus, it is inevitable that some sort of violence will take place. If you even look at Bible and just try to find out about the exodus of the Jews, was that quite a peaceful exodus? Perhaps not. Violence was even there. And in any case of violence, the memory remains. And that memory somehow eats you even after long time. And that is what we find even in this case. Right? Now, the partition that happened in India was based on religion. What was the entire idea? The idea was to have two separate nations. In two separate nations, it was believed that both these religions cannot be accommodated in the same place. Why? Because there is a shift of dynamics. There is obviously a sense inside every religion that they are superior, they are better, they are more evolved. How many of you have opened Instagram like the first thing this morning? किसने? तुमने तो झूठ मत बोलो। मैंने देखा। तो झूठ मत बोलो, मैंने उस फोटो देखा। And the first thing that I came across क्या है? Operation सिंदूर। अरे कल रात को हुआ मैं तो सो रहा, पता नहीं। तो अब let us, I mean, you don't care कि कौन क्या बोल रहा है. Just a few days back, the army of Kashmir is a jingle wave, and we are already much superior than the Hindus. We have a separate nation and a lot of poisonous things. Okay, उसका काम है वो. Please speak for that. He's a very good guy. Now, when you divide a nation based on religion, you are already dividing people. And that division cannot be erased. Today, we find who are living in India, despite claiming that we are Indian, somewhere or the other, they blame each other. And it is very much connected. Why so? Because of memories. Some sour memories. See, my maternal uncles, they came from Bangladesh. So I have heard quite a few stories from them. One such story was while they were trying to come back, there were some attempts made to butcher the entire family. They saved themselves somehow. They couldn't even bring anything. So it was like they were just wearing one simple plain cloth and they had to run. But today, after so many years, they came here, during partition, around 1947. That was the time when. So after so many years of independence and everything, ever they come to know that I have a few Muslim friends. The first expression is quite bizarre. Oh, that. They do not feel it is quite something that I should do. भरोसा करा जाए तो that. It is not Islamophobia as such. It is because they have faced something. They have lost a lot. To understand the problem, if you ever read a play by Shirley Shane, that is Mutuni Buddhi, you understand the entire thing. Though we find in Bengali literature, we try to somewhat, sugarcoat things, somewhat avoid displaying the gory nature of partition. But despite all these attempts, we cannot eliminate the mistrust that we have. Right? And this mistrust, see, so one point we have, and what it leads to. Right? Or rather, not in that sense, what you claim it today. See, we need to be technically correct. I don't know how many of you will take up mass media and all, and then you will say कि सर ने कहा था राइट, तो बहुत गलत बात बोल दिया था. अभी तो हम लोग religious violence बोलते हैं, religiously triggered violence बोलते हैं. मैं उस सब बात के चक्कर में नहीं पड़ने वाला, अभी से क्लियर रहना जरूरी है. So we have religious violence because of it. So what have we seen? First, we have seen partition, we have seen border, we have seen creation of mistrust, and now, because of mistrust, there is another thing, that is another aspect which is very important to us, that is emotional or psychological. When you talk about this one, here you get your memories, then you have your trauma, and nature. They are very much connected to each other. Again, let's go back to my mom, who always does a very weird face because of my friends. See, whenever I talk to my mom, like every other moment, he goes back to those good old days uh, when they had a lot of paddy fields and this and that and whatnot. And then they would say that this place is not at all that nice, time that we have. So this is not that time that we have, but this is also because when we used to live. When you live, it becomes a part of your identity. No matter where you